today's message, even the last couple of weeks preparing for it, as we get ready to lead into Thanksgiving, man, I was thinking about what are some of the biggest things I'm thankful for. You know, I am finding, started doing ministry in the fall of '99, a couple of degrees, studying for the ministry, theology, different stuff, right? I am finding the more I talk with people, the more I counsel with people, and the more I even examine my own life, that some of the darkest seasons of my life, God has made into some of the brightest. I mean, like seasons where I'm going through something difficult in my life, God uses to transform my heart, which in the long run, as I look back on those, it's like with gratitude, I look at the very things that I often prayed I wouldn't have to be in or go through. I mean, God has this funny way, it's like the upside down kingdom of God. He has this funny way of taking things that seem like they shouldn't work or can't work and flipping them upside down and making them phenomenal. I was even thinking about the way that God conquered, through Jesus, conquered the world. Now, let this sit in for a moment. Jesus Christ conquers. In fact, on our back wall, we have the ICXC Nika. It's Jesus Christ Victor is what it means. This is an ancient emblem that it's kind of fun to have it up there, ties us in with the ancient church. But this whole idea of Jesus Christ Victor, the conqueror, the overcomer, the one who won. And when this would have become prominent, in fact, this variant of the symbol would have become prominent, a victor would be more like, think in your mind of like the movie 300. I mean, big muscles, ironclad, powerful sword, incredibly gifted at fighting. I mean, this guy is going to come out on top. The people that had power, that had might, that had influence. Even today, when we think of somebody that's influential and powerful, we think of somebody that has resources, that is really intelligent. Like Elon Musk, right, with Tesla, or taking us to Mars, whatever it might be. Those are important people. Those are the people that can change the world. And even when Jesus came, he flipped upside down the understanding of how victory is really done. Think about this. Think of the way Christ conquered the world. He came into a family with no power or prestige. I want you to think of a poor person. This is the way he conquered the world. I mean, out of the billions with a B of Christians that have followed, this is the way the movement started. He wasn't a citizen of the prominent cultural group. Think of a minority. So right now we've got a poor minority. I want you to think of this. His primary followers weren't all that educated, mature, or even wealthy. All right, so you have a poor minority youth pastor. In fact, a lot of scholars believe that many of the disciples started following Jesus when they would have been like in their late teens. Some of them as young as maybe 14. Now, Peter would have been a little bit older, maybe in his early 20s. And so you basically have a youth pastor with teenagers that transformed the world. I mean, literally transformed the story of humanity, even if you're not a Christian. A poor minority youth pastor with a bunch of students flipped the world on its head. Think about this. The primary siege weapon in this era of Roman conquest and war and taking out people groups and overcoming them, his primary siege weapon against the accepted moral depravity of the day was love. It wasn't wealth, it wasn't power, it wasn't money, it wasn't skill with a sword, it was love. Not just that, I mean, because I have to make things really wordy, it makes me feel better, right? I got to get all the idea packed into this sentence. Not just was it love, but it was love and compassion for those who culture deemed worthless. All right, so in your mind, you got to picture this in your mind. A poor, minority, young adult with students showing love to the outcasts of culture, changed the world. When I was finishing up my degree in philosophy and religion, bachelor's, the undergraduate, I remember the first time I was sitting underneath one of my professors talking about the age that he thought many of the disciples were based on context and historical evidence. And it was so cool because at that point I was thinking about doing youth ministry, and I thought, wow, like I am getting ready to work with the people who really could change the world. Not just that, looking at this, you have a poor minority young adult. Primary siege weapon is love. And in the end, he dies young, and he was easily overtaken and easily killed. And yet somehow through history, we have this idea of Jesus Christ, victor, conqueror. He won. He beat Rome. Now, the crazy part of this is as we get ready to move into the text this morning, he shares the secret sauce, the secret ingredient with his disciples. He shares with them the way in which this is going to be done. With this in mind, let's go to the text. At this point in Matthew 26, beginning in verse 26, they were eating. Verse 26 says, while they were eating. Now, this is during Passover. They're gathered together in a small room, and he's about to give them these keys to conquest. You know, every movie I watch where it's like, you know, the underdog needs something to take out the big bad guy, it's always like a hidden weapon or a spell or something that's trying to be acquired. But not this. This is different. He's about to give them the keys to conquest. While they were eating, Jesus took bread. What bread is this? This is important. The bread that he took during Passover, the Seder bread, would have been this special bread. Now, we don't know this because we're not Jewish and we didn't grow up back then. But it was common during Passover for the head of the home, the dad, to hang on to some special bread till the very end of the Passover and then kind of pull it out and break it and give it to his closest family members. Basically saying, hey, you're in. Your last name is my last name. My values are your values. You are family. And so in this, Jesus pulls out this bread, this special bread, and he began, and let's go ahead and work through the text. While they were eating, Jesus took the bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, take and eat, this is my body. Now the symbolism here is so powerful. It's basically saying that when we take communion, oh man, you gotta hear this clearly. When we take communion, it is not just learning about the historical protagonist, Jesus. That's not what it's only about. When you take bread, the symbolism of this is Jesus breaks this special family bread, gives it to the people that are in his family, and he says, you take on my ways. My last name is now your last name. My values are now your values. What I want you to do, you do. Where I want you to go, you go. You are now under this new household. You are in. Take and eat. This is my body. When the disciples would have taken this bread, received this special bread, when they would have eaten it, it would have symbolized the acceptance of being under that head of the home. That head of the home. I accept that I am under Christ as the head of the home. Take, eat, this is my body. Verse 27, then he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink from this fruit of the vine from now on until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. There's so much packed in here, we don't have time to go into it all. When they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. All right, now this is the important piece. Communion isn't just about remembering the stories of Jesus, but committing to being as he was. You remember his ways and you institute them in your life. Okay, so it's like this. Your mom and dad can drag you to church when you were a kid. They can make you go. I could drag my kids to church and make them sit out there. You could listen to a sermon week in and week out, and the bread is being offered to you. But in a metaphorical sense, you have to receive that truth. Literally, this is what it means. You receive the truth and you say, I own it as my identity. You are not Christian because you are sitting in this room. You are not a Christian because you are sitting in this room. You become under Christ's name when you accept his family as your new identity for life. You receive it. His identity is my identity. His values are my values. I am now of the family of Christ. The secret sauce. So what is the powerful, powerful way in which Christ transformed the world? We know he did it through love. We know this poor minority with students, who, by the way, were not the best of the best students, not all of them. I mean, you had some guys that were brilliant in the group and others that they were in special classes maybe, I don't know. Some of them really were brilliant, by the way. But you have Jesus with these guys, poor minority with students, or young adults with Peter, throw him in the mix. Through the avenue of love and compassion for the last, the lost, and the least, changes the world. Why does this work better than bombs? Why does this work better than siege weapons? Why does this work better than the sword? Why does this tactic actually work? I think I'm beginning to barely understand it. I have an interesting role in society. I'm a pastor. So here's what this means functionally. I get to play in taboo land. All the things that people try to avoid, like talking about politics or religion or things where culture disagrees morally, I get to live and talk in the very areas that all of you all are trying to ignore. That's what I get to do all the time. Emails, people write in, right? Or I write for a couple newspapers, as you know. Like people write in from articles and ask questions. I am constantly living politics, religion, moral discrepancies between different parties and what they believe. I'm living in this world constantly, and I'm beginning to learn something. After sitting down over the years, after sitting down with young adults battling with sexual identity, I mean, like I'm at a table getting coffee or in my office sitting down with students that are really wrestling with sexual identity. They come to my office knowing I'm not going to see the world the same way they do, but they still come because they care about my thought or opinion. They were students I had in the youth department that are growing up now. And when I sit there and I listen to their heart and I work to get to know them, I am finding that it is really hard to hate someone you are trying to understand and care about. It is really hard to actually hate someone that you are trying to understand and care about. It's really easy to hate somebody that you've never met and just throw out mean things on Facebook. That's easy to do. But when you're really trying to get to know them and you love these people, it's really hard to hate them, even if you disagree with them. It's really hard to hate them. I've sat down with people battling with addictions, ugly, gross addictions. In one case, an addiction that landed a man in prison. I sat down with illegal immigrants who came here because they had nothing, and they really are great Christian people, and who are now terrified that they're going to have to leave their families behind because they've been here for so many years and they don't know what to do, weeping with me. It's really hard to hate someone you're trying to understand and care about. It's really hard to hate someone you're trying to understand and care about. It's really hard to hate someone you're trying to understand and care about. I'm not saying you have to agree with them, and my goodness, the Lord knows I disagree with a lot of people in my office over the phone or over a cup of coffee, a lot. But when they know I really care about them, it changes everything. You see, because this poor minority with a bunch of teenagers used love to conquer Rome and ultimately the world. I didn't say that he had to buy into all their values. I said how he approached their values and how he approached the person was with love. See, somehow in our culture, we believe that you have to agree with someone morally, you have to agree with their values to actually like them. That's not true. You can absolutely like somebody and think they're wrong. Ask any parent. There are many times I would give my life for my children, and I totally think they're wrong with things. And when Jesus entered into the world, when he let these disciples into the inner circle, when he says, you are a part of my family, he gives them the keys. It is through the heart and ways of Jesus that the world is transformed. I think of Martin Luther King, Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. This is such a great, if you've not ever read the lecture, you need to. The sermon. I mean, in our culture, they work really hard to make Martin Luther King Jr. They minimize his pastoral part and just maximize his social justice part. But the truth is, everything was driven by his passion for God. In fact, read through Martin Luther King Jr.'s actual sermons. Read through them. It was his love of Christ that drove him to do what he does, or did. And I love this. This is Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. In fact, I'm going to read it to make sure I get it exactly right. But he says this. He says, it is love. It is love. I mean, Luther knew this so well. This guy knew it so well. Martin Luther King Jr. knew it so well. What would actually transform the world. What would transform social justice for African Americans. He knew what would actually work. It wasn't them rising up and burning buildings and shattering cars and flipping stuff over. That wasn't going to win it. It was just going to make the opposing party more angry. He knew what would actually work. This is what he says. He says, it is love that will save our world and our civilization. These are his words. Love even for enemies. It's really hard to hate somebody you're trying to get to know and care about. When I was finishing my degree, not the exercise science stuff, but I was finishing my philosophy and religion, I kind of had an interesting job. So I had done all my certs, and I was ready to change. So I was training in a YMCA, exercise training with people in a YMCA. And during the day, that was in the evenings, and during the day, I'm sitting in all these theology and apologetics classes. It was actually a really fun season. Because I'm in two different worlds, right? So I get to go to school and study all this really nerdy stuff, metaphysics, epistemology, all the really great stuff, and then I get to go to a gym that night and have conversations with real people. I'm even training them. I got to know them. They paid me to work out with them. And there was one guy down in the gym. He wasn't a guy that I trained, but just a guy that worked out down there. And he was atheist, agnostic, and he kind of saw himself as really smart, and so I loved to go to class during the day. I was literally in a season where I was going through an apologetics course, and I would learn how to defend my faith and then go to the gym that evening and then debate with him in the gym. Now, you got to understand, that kind of stuff is kind of fun for me. And so, though it's awkward for a lot of people, I'm kind of having a good time, truth be told. And it's so fun because the timing of it all, like I'm in classes, learning how to defend my faith, and then I get to go in the evenings and have these debates. There was one night we got into a heated debate. And I had just come from a class talking about, the moral obligation. How could there be a good God if there's so much evil in the world? But the moral argument for God, like we were talking about all this in school. And then I get to the gym that night, and this guy is basically coming at me with the same stuff I'm totally prepared to fight him on. It was awesome. And so as a young guy, I'm down there, and we just get going back and forth, and it's getting heated, and we're getting mad at each other, and it's getting louder and louder. And looking back now, oh my goodness, I'm a little embarrassed. I mean, like if I would go and visit a gym where this was happening, I would feel really awkward. But I was in the middle of it. I was a young adult. It was fun. At that time, I didn't even think about it. And it got so heated, and I just started coming at him with the moral argument. And I mean, I just written papers on this. I'm totally prepared to go to war. And so, I mean, boom, boom, straight down the list, right into him. And he stops, and he's furious, and he marches out of the gym. And I never saw him again. I don't know if he changed the time that he worked out. I don't know if he was just like, I'm never going back there again. I don't know what happened. But I never saw the guy again. And I learned something that night. You can win an argument and lose a person. I guarantee he didn't hop in his car and change how he voted on the next election. I guarantee he didn't. He didn't hop in his car and be like, I'm going to change who I'm going to vote for in the next election. He didn't do that. I guarantee he didn't hop in his car and go, I feel the love of God. It is time to give my life to him. I guarantee that didn't happen either. Yes, defend your faith. Yes, stand for truth. But the platform in which that is done is compassionate, loving relationships. Do you hear me? The platform in which that is done is compassionate, loving relationships. You earn the right to speak. Jesus Christ overcame Rome and the world, the poor, minority, with a bunch of teenagers, transformed the planet on the platform of love. Not agreeing, not always agreeing, but love. Love. I want you to pull out your Next Steps card, and we're going to draw this sermon to a close just a little earlier today because we're going to spend an extended time in communion. But I want you to pull out your Next Steps card, and here's what I want you to do. Whatever God is speaking in your heart, literally just, Lord, what are you trying to tell me? If you need to make a decision to follow him, if you need to confess, if you have bitterness in your heart, if you find yourself just constantly angry, even in defending things that honor God, you find a heart that is not like God. Okay, whoa, I got you distracted and you missed that. Look at me. Even if you're defending things for God, but you find that your heart is not at all like Christ's, you got something you need to wrestle with. Do you hear me? And so as you pull this Next Steps card out, ask the question, Lord, what are you telling me? Is there a part of my heart I need to lay before you? And then the next thing I want you to do is this, okay? So I guess it's two parts. It's kind of confusing when I do that. But the next thing I want you to do is we are moving into a season we're going to be talking about gratitude and thanksgiving leading up into Christmas. And I want you, before the Lord, I want you to ask this question. God, reveal to me what I should be most grateful for, or something that I should be grateful for. And I want you to write out, I am grateful for. As you look back over this last year, even if you've been through a hard season, Josh said it really well. Some of you may need to write, I'm not grateful for the hard thing, but I'm grateful for the promise of Christ through it. So even so, I am grateful. But I just want you to take a moment. I want you to write on the card, what are you grateful for as you look back over this last year? And I'm going to do something cool with that in the weeks to come. So those two parts, what is the Lord saying to you in general? a response, and then the second thing, what are you grateful for? What is the Lord saying to you in general? Do you need to make a decision, move closer towards Christ, prayer request, and what are you grateful for? Decision, any decision you need to make, what are you grateful for? Take a moment before the Lord, on the card, fill it out, go. We just want to thank you for watching the sermon online. If God is working in your heart, we would love to hear about it. You can go online, www.encountertrinity.com/nextstepscard. You can fill out information there. Let us know what God is doing in your heart. If you need help with anything, we would love to help. Counseling, we would love to do anything that we can to help you go to that next level spiritually. When you fill this out, it goes to one of our pastors. It is private, and we will take care of that information to the best of our ability. We love you, we care about you, and we want to see God do great things in your life. Have a great day.